All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today at Freelancer School. And I am Mike Volkin, lead instructor of Freelancer Masterclass. Today we have with us Michael Zipursky, is the CEO of Consulting Success and coach to consultants. He has advised organizations like the Financial Times, Dow Jones, and others. And he's helped Panasonic launch new products into global markets. But more importantly, he's helped over 300 consultants from around the world in over 50 industries and add 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenues. And he has over 34,000 consultants read his weekly consulting newsletter. And he's the author of best-selling books like The Elite Consulting Mind and the book called Coaching Success. And I believe Michael even offers a 47-page consulting blueprint on his website. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, and the book is Consulting Success, same as the website.
Consultingsuccess.com. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks, great to be with you.
So I've heard you mention on your podcast that an entrepreneur can achieve greater success by subtraction than addition. Can you explain this to our audience? Because I think it was really interesting what you said.
Sure. I think today more than ever we have options, and there's lots of different ways to try and grow a business. There's lots of different information that's all surrounding us, and so what a lot of entrepreneurs think about is, in order to grow, we need to add more, we need to do more, we need to put out more products or offer more services. And in my experience, my observation, that's exactly the exact opposite, that by subtracting, by taking away different offerings, by taking away different products, by removing complexity and moving towards simplicity. And actually, in fact, if you study the most successful companies of our times, most of them got started by being very focused. It was only later on, once they achieved a certain level of traction and success, that they then started to add additional offerings. And so even though you might believe that you need to have more to grow, in fact, if you get more focused at the early stages, especially, it allows you to see greater results faster.
Yeah, when you mentioned, that's a good point. When you mentioned the companies that have started off really small and then niched out, I immediately thought of Amazon, right? So it wasn't too long ago when they only offered books.
Exactly.
And they just decimated the book industry. Barnes and Nobles, Borders all went down, or a fraction of what they were. And now there is nothing that Amazon won't sell now with success. And they've even got their own delivery. They deliver their own packages now throughout the world, and it's just amazing. So
yeah, I mean, and exactly to your point, if Amazon tried to launch everything they have today at the early stages, there's no way that they would have gotten any traction, because it would have been just even not economical to do that.
Now, do you think the reason for that is because of the marketing is too general, or do you think it's probably the operation, from an operational standpoint, it's difficult to scale something and so with so many different industries and products and services, or maybe a combination of the two? Is there one or the other that's more important?
I think you hit it on the head there, Mike. It's definitely both, right? So if you are trying to offer different things to different people at the early stages, it makes it very hard to be focused, which means you have to have different messages, different groups. And at the early stages, that's very challenging to manage. But on top of that, right, there's actually the physical management of all of that. And so most of us feel, stretched at times, right? We feel overwhelmed, and especially if we're trying to consume all this information that's confronting us right now on online. And so by removing that and getting very focused, like what I say to a lot of people is, listen, if you want to have a 7-figure business, as an example, let's just say you want to reach that $1 million mark that so many people, think is kind of like the best place to be. Everyone's working towards 1 million. Well, you don't need to have 5 or 6 different offerings to do that. You can get there with 2 or 3 offerings maximum. You don't have to have anything more than that. I've seen it over and over again. And so, people are trying to create a lot of complexity by having, they're doing speaking from the get-go, and they're offering webinars and books and products, and they're doing 10 different things, and they think they have to have all these different service offerings. And you go to their website, it's just a big list of stuff. That's confusion, because when you go to talk to someone and say, what do? You don't even know what to say, because you offer too many different things. So being very focused, saying, this is exactly who I help, this is how I help them, this is the result that I help them to achieve, the problem that I help them to solve, it becomes much easier to have that conversation.
So true. Early on in Freelancer Masterclass, module 2 of 10, we talk about elevator pitches and unique selling propositions, because that is a foundation for everything. If you don't know how to say, I get the typical freelancer, like, what do you do? Oh, I help companies scale. Well, what does that mean? There's so much to that. Like, can you niche that down? And I keep telling people, you can't niche down far enough. There's so much money to be made out there. I mean, you can pick a niche of a niche of a niche, and it still be a multi-million-dollar opportunity for you. You just have to be able to execute it right.
Exactly.
So what is the only thing that is holding freelancers and consultants back? Or I don't want to say the only, but what's the major thing that you see talking to all these consultants? What's the big tie-in that's holding them all back?
Yeah, universally, I mean, this is across all businesses and for all entrepreneurs, and certainly consultants and freelancers. It's mindset, right? That's the biggest thing that holds all of us back, is what's kind of between our ears. And so people often think that it's something else. They think, oh no, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough skills. I don't have the tools. I don't have all the automations, right? And so we're looking at all these external things that we don't have that are holding us back. But in fact, it's none of that, right? Most of us actually know what we need to do. Most of us have studied enough. We've read the books. We've done whatever it is. And so what's holding us back is not our lack of knowledge. It's our lack of implementation.
Yeah.
And that lack of implementation comes from our mindset, comes from our beliefs and the fears that we have. And so in order to see greater results, you got to push past that. You need to look at really what are the beliefs that you have, what are your limiting beliefs, and then figure out what you need to do to start making progress to overcome them.
Yeah, you were speaking my language. I'm into creative visualization right now. It's my new thing. And I'm reading a book called The Power of Neuroplasticity. And it talks about now that we have the ability to measure human brains like we never have before in the last few years, they can actually show you how much power you have to actually rewire your brain. And your brain has way more power than we ever thought was possible. And you had mentioned beliefs, and I probably would have stated the lack of beliefs, but either way, we're talking about the same thing. The power for you to believe, and even just for 5 or 10 minutes a day, do creative visualization does amazing things. And I'm a tennis player, and when I started doing creative visualization after 2 weeks, I won one of my competitive tennis matches 6-0, 6-0 in my league. A person didn't win a game, and he went to go complain to the other coach that I was in the wrong league. And it would have been a match that would have been very close, but I believed I could win. I visualized myself winning and hitting perfect strokes and having great techniques. And I crushed it that day. And ever since that, I've been hooked on creative visualization. So there's more power to the mind than you think. So
yeah, it's very true.
Earlier about consultants and freelancers finding a niche and going after it. But how do you develop an offer that aligns and resonates with someone's ideal client? It's easier said than done, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge, right? Those first two parts, when you're starting your consulting or freelancing business, right? Getting clear on what we call your ideal client clarity. So really clear as to who your ideal client is. And the second part is developing a message that will get the attention and interest of that ideal client, right? That will really resonate with them, that they'll respond to. And so in terms of how do you figure out an offering that's going to work with those people or align or essentially be what they want to buy, it's all about having conversations, right? And this is where most people, they neglect this, or they don't actually kind of lean into it because they're hesitant to have those conversations. They're spending a lot of time building a bunch of stuff. They're working on their website, they're working on their funnels, they're working on their social media, they're creating all the stuff that they think is going to help them to solve the problem that they believe that they have. But in fact, they can solve that problem a lot easier by just going on and having conversations with their ideal clients to find out, what is the problem that you have right now? What are you looking to, are you actually looking to invest in a solution, right? When you understand what it is that your client is going through right now, or the person that you believe is your ideal client, and you have a conversation with them, you'll very quickly be able to validate whether the hypotheses and the assumptions that you have are valid or not, right? Too often, like I remember back in the day, my cousin Sam and I, who's still my business partner to today, in a different business that we had, we invested $21,000 in building this product that we believed the market wanted. And then when we finally launched many months later, like we crammed every feature into that. We had a bunch of developers working on it, all that kind of stuff. And then we found out when we launched it that like 95% of what we had built, people didn't want. They only wanted 5%. It would have saved us a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy if we just actually asked the market earlier on. And so that's always stuck with me now. This is 15 years later from that point, but still today it's stuff that I counsel my clients on and those that we coach, because it's so important to go and just validate, to have that conversation. And so back to your real question, Mike, how do you develop an offer that your ideal clients will really want? Well, first of all, figure out who is your ideal client. And you don't need to be 100% right with that, right? A lot of people believe that, I'm not going to go and have a conversation until I actually know exactly who my ideal client is. But the truth is that clarity around your ideal client and your messaging, those evolve over time, right? Who your ideal client is today and your messaging the way it is today is not going to be the way that it is in years from now, potentially. That's going to change in months or years going forward. So you just need a starting point. So decide, who do you believe is your ideal client? What do you believe is the message that will resonate with them, right? Based on the problems they have and so forth. And then get in front of them, get some introductions, get some referrals, hustle, like figure out some ways to get some conversations going, and then ask some questions so that you can truly validate whether or not what you believe the problem they have is actually the problem, and what kind of solution would be the right fit for them. And once you do that, then the whole sales process becomes a lot easier because you get to just sell what people want to buy.
Yes, yes. Don't assume. That's very good. Don't assume what they want. I have a failed business, and I think that's what makes us stronger as an entrepreneur, is kind of failing a couple of times. But I wasted almost $60,000 building a company, realizing that I was building the wrong solution all along, and I got all the way down to the nitty gritty of the features. And when I launched it, I realized, oops, I should have done 5% of this. But that did make me stronger. And that's all about the buzzword growth hacking, is, going out there, finding what they want, building the quickest, easiest solution you can just to validate some business model, and then building it out from there. But how do you structure a marketing system once you have that plan in place, and you know what you want, who you want to attract, and how you're going to attract them? How do you structure a marketing system from that point?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is that it's going to depend on who your ideal clients are and what market you're in, right? So my world is consulting. Our clients work with organizations, whether for-profit or nonprofit, whether they're funded startups or they're multi-billion-dollar organizations. But that's the world that I'm more familiar with. So I'll just kind of speak to that, because I think it's important that people recognize that it's one way of marketing is not necessarily going to be the right way of marketing for a different industry.
Sure.
Right. So if you're selling socks or poke bowls or whatever, it's going to be different. But in the sense of, if you're consulting or you're providing advice and kind of strategic direction to people, it's all about relationships, right? This is where I see a lot of people going wrong, is they think about marketing as transactional. They spend a lot of time on trying to automate and get all the right tools and everything in place without actually focusing on the relationships. So if we break this down into just kind of like step by step, a path that a lot of people can take that works consistently is, number one, right, get clear on who your ideal client is. Then number two, go out and actually connect with them. So you could use LinkedIn or a different platform to do that. But don't do it like we all get. I'm sure you get this as well, Mike, where someone connects with you and then right away, boom, they just spam you with like a big message like, here's what we do, buy from us, get our stuff, it's the best. Yeah. It's like, really? Right? Yeah. You would never do that you would never go to a networking event and say, hi, my name is Michael. Do you want to buy this thing that I have? Like, you would never do that. So why are you doing it online, right? Just because you can hide behind a screen, act like a human being, because you are a human being. It's all about relationships. And especially when you're selling valuable, products or services, it's not just a quick snap of the finger decision, right? There's a level of trust that needs to be in place. There's a level of risk that is there as well. And so to overcome all that and to make sure that everything is in line, right, you need to have the relationship there. So once you connect with them, once they accept that connection request, and even if they don't, there's other things that you can do to start providing value to them. Right. And over time, you're going to be in touch with them. You're going to make sure that they understand what your value proposition is and how you might be able to help them. You're adding value, you're staying in touch, you're doing consistent follow-up. And then a percentage of the marketplace is going to want exactly what you have, right, if you've done your job pretty quickly, but the majority won't. And so that's where follow-up is really critical, right? Continuing to get in front of those people, delivering value, delivering different messages, checking in, following up, right, over a period of time. And you're going to be able to build a thriving pipeline by doing that. And where most people kind of fall down is they stop after one or two attempts to convert someone. They think, oh yeah, it's this transaction. I guess what I'm doing isn't working because I reached out 2 or 3 times, or I sent a couple of LinkedIn messages and it didn't work. So I guess this whole thing doesn't work. And then they abandon it, only to maybe hope, recognize later on that it's actually all the follow-up and everything that happens later on, right, over a longer period of time, that actually generates the vast majority of the sales.
Yeah, that's so true. And the more popular the person is that you're trying to reach, the more follow-up you should do. Like if you're trying to reach CEOs or CMOs that are usually really busy at a company, you want to do more than just 1 or 2 LinkedIn messages. I mean, I might go so far as to say, write a handwritten letter and just mail it to them, or a postcard saying, hey, trying to get your attention on LinkedIn, please respond. You'll be surprised at how the stuff that isn't so normal nowadays will get all the attention that you need. So yeah, you actually talk about ROI positioning on your website. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think our freelancers that are listening to this are saying, well, how can I increase my fees or my hourly rate or my project base? And you talk about ROI positioning, which I think is a great answer to this. So please explain that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not a big fan of hourly fees. I believe there's just creates a ceiling, and it doesn't work well for the client or for the consultant or the freelancer in that case. So ROI positioning, right, is all about identifying the value and the ROI for the client. And by doing that, or the way that you do that is by having a conversation with the buyer, a meaningful conversation. So in our world, we call that a meaningful sales conversation. And that conversation is all about digging deep into what the buyer cares most about. Right? A lot of people have what we call surface level conversations. So they'll ask things like, what do you want this to look like? And how do you want it to be? And it's just surface level, but you're not getting deep. And so and a few examples of maybe kind of deeper level questions would be, tell me about why this is so important to you, and what will things look like for you when this is in place, right? How will that be different than today? If you don't do this right now, then what happens? So that's called COI, cost of inaction, right? If you stay where you are, right, and don't change anything, what's the impact on your business? What kind of results, will you be able to generate when you have this new solution in place? So you're digging a lot deeper into the real reasons for them to do this now, as opposed to waiting. And you're also starting to connect the value or the ROI that they can get by doing this. And so it's not just about, hey, can you come in and help us with our develop a marketing plan for us or develop a website for us. Now it's about, well, if you develop a marketing plan for us, how does that actually help the business? Oh, well, our goal is to add an extra, $5 million in the next 2 years. Okay. And, why is it so important for you to do right now? Well, we're seeing a lot more competition. Our competitors are starting to grab some market share from us. And is that a concern for you? Yeah, that's a big concern for us right now. Well, tell me more about that. Why is that a big concern right now, as opposed to maybe it wasn't a concern before? So it's a real conversation, right? The way I like to describe it, Mike, is it's like an onion, and you're peeling back the layers of the onion to get to the core, right? To get to the center. And the more that you do that, then the more valuable that you become to that buyer. Number one reason is because you're asking them questions that no one else has typically asked them, right? You're getting to think about things that they haven't necessarily thought about before, or they get a little light bulb moment where something clicks and goes, oh, right? As they're thinking to answer that question, now they feel a lot clearer. They feel a lot more kind of confident that you are someone that can help them. So you're demonstrating authority through that whole discussion. But most importantly, you're moving the conversation from just investing into you as an expense or a cost, to an actual investment, right? They're thinking about, yeah, I'm going to put money in, but I can see how I'm going to get more money out from doing that. And most people are not happy about expenses or costs, but they're a lot more excited about making an investment because they can see that there's a greater return that's going to come from doing it.
Yeah, I like that. It's also called value-based pricing, right? ROI positioning. But so what would happen in this case? So let's say somebody came to us with a marketing plan. Somebody came to me with a marketing plan, right? And they said, our goal is to do $1 million. How would I price that when there's somebody else out there that's doing hourly? It says, hey, I can do a marketing plan for you for $1,000. And I come and I say it's going to be 20,000. And I realize I'm asking all the right questions, and I'm showing them that I'm different, and they like that. But that's not big enough. That's too big of a gap there, So how would you deal with something like that, for example?
Yeah. So the first thing is to recognize that you don't win the business. So you shouldn't try and win the business at the point of providing a proposal or stating your fees. If you're waiting to that point to try and win the business, then you've likely already lost, right? So what you should be thinking about is, how do you actually start to create greater differentiation? How do you contribute and put out more value into the marketplace, so that when someone approaches you, when you actually start to even have that conversation, they're already seeing you differently than that hourly provider, right? They know that there's cheaper options out in that marketplace. They have a sense that you're probably more expensive. They're expecting that. And that happens because they already see you as an expert, whereas they see these other people. Like, there's a lot of marketing consultants out there. There's a lot of web design and developers out there, but some are able to earn 10 or 20 times more than others. Why is that? Well, it's because they have a better client list. They have a lot more thought leadership out there, right? You find them a lot easier online. You see them speaking. They have books on the subject, whatever it is, right? They've put in the work to create enough thought leadership, or to put out enough value into the marketplace, so that when the client approaches them, they already know that they're going to be a more expensive solution. So that's part of it, right? But it's also the conversation that you have, because the consultants or the freelancers that go in and just say, yeah, our hourly fee is whatever, $200 an hour, and this is what we do. Their conversation with the client is going to be very different than the consultant or freelancer that's thinking a lot more about value and a lot more about ROI. And so if you've been able to navigate that conversation properly, by the end of that conversation, the buyer will understand that, yeah, this is a different type of person. Like, we've gone a lot deeper. An example that I give, Mike, is, imagine if you're going to have your house painted, and you call 2 different contractors to come over, house painters, and one comes and they kind of like walk around and they give you a quote. Yeah, it's going to be $1,500 to paint your house. Okay. And another person comes and they're walking around your house and they go, oh, how long has this patch been like that for? And okay, yeah, you see how this is peeling over here? Yeah, so this is why that's happening. So it might cost a little bit more, but my suggestion actually would be to probably remove some of these areas, apply these 2 different layers of paint, because it's going to last you 10 years longer.
Yeah, you won't need me again. Yeah,
exactly, right? But even through that conversation, even though you know that it's going to cost you more, that second person is going to be more expensive, you feel a lot more trust. You feel like, yeah, this person actually is looking out for me. They're much more detailed. They're much more specific. There's a lot more value happening in that conversation, whether or not I actually go with them. But most people will end up going with them if they have the financial ability to do so, because the value is there.
Right. Yeah, I love it. That's great. And I think more freelancers should get away from hourly, because I'm constantly getting bombarded. But what should I get charged per hour? It's like, why? I mean, I just hired 2 content writers to write almost the same blog post. One was $60 more an hour, but the one who was cheaper got it done like 3 times faster. I would have never known that, because it's such a terrible indicator of work output is the hourly rate. I have no idea how fast you can work or what the quality is. Yeah. So I can't stand hourly rates. But how can our audience find you online? I think you've got a lot of great ideas to share.
Yeah, definitely. So consultingsuccess.com. And for those, as you mentioned, we have a 47-page consulting blueprint they can get for free, and they can get that at consultingsuccess.com/blueprint.
Cool. And what does that blueprint teach? Is it a step-by-step module, or what is it?
No, so the blueprint pretty much goes through several different key kind of foundational areas that are critical to building a successful consulting business. So there's a whole section in there around pricing. So we talk about ROI positioning. We talk about how to actually start attracting ideal clients and building out your marketing system. There's information there. There's actually a whole bunch of questions around the sales process. So it's kind of like some of the key areas around consulting. And we go into those over the 47 pages. So there's a lot of value in there that people can, if they're interested in building a consulting business or taking their existing consulting business to the next level, I think it'll be a good resource for them.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll link to your website so they can get that in the show notes. And thank you very much for joining. Let's keep in touch in the future. Okay.
My pleasure, Mike.
All right. Take care.